Partnered by Times Influence.
The third edition of Saint-Gobain's Smart Green Summit and Awards, in association with the Economic Times, brought together national and international players on one platform as they discussed and deliberated on key issues impacting our cities. Venkat Subramanian, Regional CEO, Construction Products India, and Managing Director, Gyproc India, set the agenda for the evening and welcomed one and all.
Distinguished dignitaries, eminent speakers, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to extend a warm welcome to one and all to the third edition of the Smart Green Summit and Awards 2018. The Smart Green Summit and Awards reflect our deep commitment to the green cause through recognizing green crusaders and helping channelize the fraternity's collective and collaborated efforts to ensure the future of habitat is in safe hands. Thank you for your presence today, and a very warm welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
We now have the panel discussion with Mr. Santosh Kumar moderating the session.
In many of the cities, the vertical development is the flavor today, and especially where there are land constraint. You cannot go out if you are providing a affordable house, and it has to be within the city, within the municipal level. So considering that, if we give ownership to the occupant, do you think this kind of a development will be possible?
You need only 3% of land to give every Indian a 200 square meter plot. We have enough land. So what is the problem with the land? It is not urbanized land. Correct. Or the sites and services are not there. Right? The transportation is not there. Or it's not a planned land where everything that you need to live is available within walking distance. When we open up a new area, we need to make it holistic and not say like Navi Mumbai, which we did, that okay, only people are going to sleep there and everybody is going to work in Bombay, and then we're going to have all these trains and metros and traffic jams and all that, so that people who move there actually reside there. It's a new place. Why do we have to go vertical? You can have FSI 2 and it gets more expensive to build, the maintenance is higher. When you're deciding for a group of people and you decide based on their needs, their capabilities, you'll come up with a very different solution.
So Manit, from that perspective, I'll come back to you on the land thing. Land is one of the expensive proposition. Land is, if you ask any of the developer, why there is a real estate issue today, is the prices of land is very, very expensive. Three things are very, very important. One is affordable land, affordable commuting, and the affordable maintenance cost. From that perspective, again, if you do not have a proper infrastructure and the lands are available, and the story of housing is not that successful. So how do you react to that? So how do we resolve, or how do we address this shortage of housing to bring in within the accessible area?
So first let's understand land in India. 80% of our population sits all on the perimeter. In the north, because the minerals came down from the Himalayas, it was agrarian land, we farmed, they turned into cities. On the two edges of the coast of India, east and west, they were all related to trading, or they were related to fisheries and so we sort of populated the coast. The center of India is empty. However, all the perimeter of India is highly stressed due to disasters. The coast, obviously, because of typhoons, and the north because of the seismic zones and the Himalayas and all sorts of other potential disasters. If you look at Mumbai or Delhi, in fact, the two worst places in terms of land cost. Why is land high? Because it's cartelized. It's black money. It's been like that forever. Land rights is one of the biggest issues that we've had in this country. So I don't think that there is any reason for land to be expensive. Land is expensive because the developer wants to sell it expensive, it's in his interest. The politician wants to sell it expensive because it's in his interest. The only person who's interested is not him, is the market. And which is why half these apartments are lying empty. Land is abundant. We just need a more macro view to looking at land. You can't keep moving people to the periphery. Chandigarh we turned into a museum. So what do you get in return? You get Zirakpur, you get Mohali, you get that, and people are just sort of doing that. You look at Delhi. Delhi land laws are tight. So what do you get? Gurgaon, Noida, Faridabad, Kundli, and people are you don't build community like that. You build community in clusters, in neighborhoods. These are not new concepts.
You have created a lot of designs looking at the scarcity of land. Singapore has been a very small territory, but still you have been able to resolve some of the issues which the housing sector was faced. In your opinion, what do you think is the right model for India's problem?
I think, let me qualify, Singapore is not cheap. Singapore is very expensive too. Yeah. So to provide affordable housing is equally challenging. But I think over the years, it had leadership that provided that impetus and the vision and the collaboration of the community to make it happen. And we are in the period of refinement. What it takes from top down, we are bottom up. So in our journey here at this particular juncture in our development, it's about participative. It's about having the ownership which we have actually put in place over the years. Having ownership, you have the sense of pride. You want to ensure that your living environment, your dwelling place, your workplace, a working in place, aging in place, all that pans out not only for yourself, for your future generation. I think with this common vision, perhaps through the leadership of with the political will, I think that perhaps, if I may naively say, could we not deal with issues, but talk about vision? And then from there, the partners in the form of planners, in terms of designers, in terms of administrative management, all come together, and that would realize a vision that is a bit more utopian, rather than saying about slums, what to deal with it. To me, I think that must be that kind of collaborative effort to make living environment, to create communities that are a bit more integrated.
Into the future, there's going to be increasing reliance on technology in areas where it's useful. When we're applying technology to building design, we need to feed that information through to the construction process, then to the operation process, and the facilities management, and then at the end of the building's life, ideally also use that for recycling processes. So as we learn more about how to support the procurement processes, we will have richer models of the building that will be maintained in the computer in sync with the real structure.
We do have to deal with migration. We can't think that it's something that will stop, but we have to understand that sometimes building needs to be quick, it needs to be responsive to critical situations, and we need not to go the route of permanent planning for the next 50, 100 years, but we need to be able to respond quickly and flexibly for those needs.
And now we have the spotlight presentations. We continue with the disruptive technology trends. And our first presenter under it is Mr. Pradeep Nair, the Managing Director, Autodesk India and SAARC, as he presents on design and build better with VR and BIM. What's next?
You can actually build buildings that produce, in a sustainable manner. In a city like Delhi, where we have air quality issues, one of the biggest issues with air quality in Delhi is the dust created by construction, by building construction, and that's something that you can avoid with things like this. It's very possible to change how construction gets done through processes like this, and that's a great example. artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of that stuff. Industrialization of construction. It's not just what's happening in other parts of the world, it's happening right here in India. I just want to reference a client of ours. This is a company called KEF Infra. What they do is they've taken the construction process and turned it into manufacturing. The government talks about 20 million houses by 2022. You can't do that with traditional modes of construction. It's possible for, what these guys do is they've taken construction and treated it like a manufacturing process. So they actually, this is a factory of theirs that manufactures buildings. So what they do is take BIM and they design the model in BIM and they use it to feed a set of machines that construct various parts of these buildings, build them and transport them from their factory. So all of that dust, all of that pollution, all of that goes away. They construct it off-site, they manufacture, these off-site, bring it to site and build it together. And again, not just, we're not talking of small projects. This is one of their projects, this is the Infosys that they built, 500,000 square feet in just about 15 months. Very difficult to do that with traditional modes of construction. They're building a mall near here in Lucknow. I think it's about 2 million square feet, and they expect to complete that in about 21 months. That's the kind of change that's possible with industrialized construction. Let's talk about stadiums. Stadiums incredibly complex, incredibly difficult to build, lots of structural complexity, thousands of people working on these, right? And they also are beautiful structures now. They represent cities in many ways. So this is a city. This is a stadium that they built. I think it's in Minnesota for the Minnesota Vikings. What they did, and again, very complex, covered roof, zinc exterior panels. I think 5 of the largest pivoting glass doors in the world that you could ever find. That's what they have. And what they did was, of course, they built a BIM model to get stakeholder approvals, right? So how do you traditionally do that? You show them visualizations, you show them drawings. You didn't do that. They actually put on VR headsets, and what the clients were able to do, what the stakeholders were able to do was walk through the design, live in the design, step into the design, so to speak. So they could experience the stadium even before a brick had been laid. So that's, and again, built on the BIM model. So that's what you can do with technology now.
The next presenter talks to us on high-rise and technology. Dr. Jose Rezai Zorabi, the founding director of Web Structures Singapore and Milan Research Lab. He's engineer, designer, educator, one of the initiators of the concept of fusion engineering, and the first and only engineer to receive the coveted title of Designer of the Year from the President of Singapore in 2016.
The Four Seasons Resort in the Seychelles, Bosco Verticale in Milan, and buildings of this nature, green and high-rise, which one sort of has in mind when we talk about green and high-rise. I would like to, however, maybe propose that there is an alternative green which doesn't have a single tree on it, like these 2 buildings, Zaha and Isuzaki's buildings in Milan. But the green is in the technology that is embedded, that is embodied in the development. These buildings are greener than these buildings, even though they don't look as literally vegetated and green. But that is the power of technology. The world's most sustainable office space doesn't have a single tree in it. And that is the power of technology. Now, as designers, I'm a structural engineer. I work with a lot of good architects and designers. But what is the purpose of design? I think that it is important that we have a purposeful design for us. For me, the purpose of design is to address challenges facing humanity and our planet. And I would like to talk about a few of these here, rather than say that we all know what those challenges are. The challenges are climate change. Climate change is a big challenge. Inequality, education and health, or lack of proper access to it. The simplest thing, carbon footprint, CO2, that we're all familiar with, has gone up. This is a report by the UN. In 2017, in November, October, the report came out. Parts per million is 403 parts of CO2 per million, the density of CO2 in the atmosphere. It is the highest it has been in the past 800,000 years. Not 800 years or 1,000 years, 800,000 years for which we can collect data. The rise from 2016 to 2017 is 3.3 parts, is the highest rise. CO2 in the atmosphere is at the highest it has ever been, and it is going up at the highest rate it ever has been. That is a challenge. I think we as designers, as practitioners, we must deal with those things.
Through advisory dialogues, industrial designer Elaine Mullins and Michael Foley discuss the changing face of sustainable buildings by throwing light on new and dynamic design materials.
How do you make sensible choices with material so early in the gestation period of an idea that affect whatever you do from a design standpoint?
At this stage, I think it's very important. Then when we do design a product, then we want to have a good understanding of the user. Because it's not that I design products to use myself. Yeah, I'm going to use them maybe myself, but I want to have a good understanding who is the user, what's she going to do with that product. It's not for my ego or for my portfolio that I design products. I design products to people who will use them.
So do you see scale differently? Because in India, when you look at scale and talk about scale and usage of material, the idea of scale kind of lends to the fact that you need to be very sensible and smart about how little you can use to scale up to a large application. So with that, I mean, the whole thought of, how do you design for smaller scale to a larger scale, and then the implications of material and process as a consequence.
I sure think that the scale of products of the series, the large series that are produced in Europe is not that big anymore. There's still companies that produce a lot of products and just hopefully sell them. I'm more into products now that are more, again, for user. And also that they have to be, depending on the type of product. If it's a product that you can use for several years, that grows on you as a user, but also grows in the use of the product, in the physical appearance of the product, it gets a sort of a patina, the product. There's, for instance, a company where I work for, they make upholstery leather seatings, and all the seatings that I make are handmade, and if you, in 5 years' time, have something that is broken or something, they will fix it also for you. And so it's seating, it's sofas and so on that you use for 20 years or longer, and I think that makes the product more sustainable.
With a series of spotlight presentations, Professor O.P. Agarwal highlighted the importance of governance and policies for addressing problems of urban cities. Chavi Rajawat, Sarpanch of village Soda in Rajasthan, drew attention to the state of water and infrastructure in India's rural areas.
You see, a city is a space. It's not a sector. Unfortunately, the way we are organized here, most state governments have a department for urban development. You have a department for transport. You have a department for energy. You have a department for housing. But a city encompasses all of this. So we tend to look at cities as a sector, but that's not what it is. A city is a space. I think cities like Chandigarh were designed, whereas cities like Gurgaon have been built. The difference between designing a city and building a city is when you design a city, you make sure that all these different aspects fit in a logical manner. This is where we are probably going wrong, not looking at a proper design before you start building it. Our current governance systems really don't facilitate this kind of an integrated design of a city. They're too fragmented. Frankly, even within individual sectors, there's a lot of fragmentation. And transport, which is one sector I've been familiar with, you'll find metro systems don't talk to bus systems, who don't talk to road systems. Transport systems don't talk to land use planning systems. So a lot of fragmentation even within a sector. A lot of these sectoral inputs at the city level are led by state government departments. So a state transport department will decide what kind of transport system you need within a city. The state water supply department will decide what kind of water systems you need in a city. A state power department will decide what kind of energy systems you need in a city. But these are not decided at a city level. And Mr. George Ferguson mentioned that unless you have local level planning, which is the right optimal structure for any city, this is what you'll have. Keep having state level interventions which are looking at only state plans. Our governance systems at the city level are really focused on approvals. They're not focused on planning. I think this is what needs to be fixed.
My village, they had not seen development for a very long time. 2009 was the worst drought the area had seen. And the challenges were such that not only did we not have water for our cattle, which was dying, but we did not have safe drinking water available to us, as a result of which people had no choice but to drink the contaminated groundwater, which was also extremely saline. The challenges have been many, but what we also realized was that while it's a drought-affected area, there is rainfall. And when we see rainfall, there's no proper water management. The government lab report clearly states that all groundwater has been declared unsafe, even for the purpose of irrigation. So how do villagers survive in such grave situations? And sadly, the departments who are supposedly responsible for our development were unaware of the groundwater challenge that this area was facing. But when we look at rural development as of today, we are in the 21st century, and yet machinery is prohibited when we speak of rural development, which I think is terribly unfair. Because when we look at urban development, not only is machinery used, but a lot of machinery and equipment and technology is imported to provide the solutions needed for the privileged people like you and I seated in this audience. But what about the larger number that directly affects where you live in urban spaces? And this is something that I feel people tend to forget. And therefore, that planning seems to get restricted. That mapping is done essentially of urban areas, but not of the rural areas, where I feel it is equally important.
I think the sustainable material can also be a material that can age beautifully. So if you have a leather sofa, leather will be age more and will age beautifully by use. It will become more beautiful. And that is something that I, as a designer, would like to do.
We are architects, so when we design buildings, we might be very obsessed about how the building could look, and perhaps even what kind of materials and what kind of technologies. Those are all important, but what we always have to remember is the whole agenda and the whole purpose was that we're building spaces and we're building homes. And the difference between a home and housing is that when you go into a space that is your home, that's very different from going into a building that has just been provided for you as housing. The home engenders with it a sense of ownership. It builds communities. It is a space that you relate to your family. It is a space that you dwell. And a housing becomes a place that is perhaps a space that is a shelter over the roof. And I feel that homes are more important because it is when you build homes that it really creates the whole purpose of building, what the purpose of the buildings are meant to be.
Partnered by Times Influence.